All right, I'm here with Chris Hornbrook of Poison the Well, many other projects I'm looking forward to talking to you about. Man, what's happening? It's been about 5 years. It was COVID times the last time we spoke.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I mean, things are good. Just a little bit of downtime before we're in the beginnings of rehearsals before we hit the road with Converge beginning of April, and we're just trying to get these new songs tight and sounding, you know, not all the songs, but like 5 songs we'll have in the repertoire to
Right.
play, and yeah, just trying to get them, tight because none of the songs sound terribly difficult, but it's like to play them correctly, it's a little tricky.
Yeah. I mean, when you say tricky, is it that there are little subtle pattern shifts that you're trying to stick to that are on the recording? Is that sort of what makes it tricky, or is it also the chemistry of everybody's parts, sort of everything?
It's a little bit of everything. I mean, I think from a drummer's point of view, definitely a little bit more angular and it's a little bit more busy, which is great. But I think in the heavy world, not to big up myself or anything like that, but like heavy world isn't necessarily known for having feel and groove. So
Correct.
that's what makes it tricky because I that's one of like my highest values. It's like you have to be, even if you're playing odd meters, you have to be able to, you know, not bang, but like nod your head to it. There has to be that feel that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's like learning how to play that stuff because when we recorded it, some of the stuff that we put together in the studio, some of
Mm-hmm.
the stuff that we had like prior because the record was done in 2 sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the stuff we had, and then the majority of it we recorded, and a lot of it we wrote while we were at Will's.
Wow.
So it was like having to relearn it and then that whole thing. But yeah, it's like going over it and making sure that like it grooves and it hits a certain way. So because
Yeah.
that to me is priority. Like I think busyness is cool and speed's cool and all that stuff's cool, but like you have to be there has to be some feeling and some pocket behind some groove behind what you do when you play. It doesn't matter if it's heavy or R&B or like it has to have feel or you're just a fucking drum machine and
Right.
it's no
Right.
point, right?
Yeah, I tell you, the guy who always nailed that for me was Matt Cameron of Soundgarden.
He's one of the goats, man. He's I mean it's definitely his what he did with Soundgarden because that's my particular favorite era, not era, but I know he was in Pearl Jam forever, but
Right.
Super Unknown is like the record for me.
Holy shit.
Um, Super musical, like great fucking feel, great finesse, like dynamics are great. And he's not insanely busy, but it's also the period in time, the sort of chop revolution had not happened yet. That was like
Right.
I think that was more relegated to like, the sort of jazz fusion world with like, Vinnie Colaiuta and those sort of, Dennis Chambers, those sort of guys. It hadn't made its way to where it is now because it's pretty ubiquitous, man.
It is. Holy shit, boy, is it. Yeah. You're an
Yeah,
outlier. You're an outlier just for saying that, like, you're like over here trying to, within rock especially, try to think about like groove and space and,
well, my thing is like when something is everywhere, then it's nowhere, right? So if
Right.
everybody is trying to do the same thing and sound the same and pulling the same thing from the same
Uh-huh.
players, same playbook, whatever, then like, yeah, you get a bunch of people that like, because we're all sharing information through TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and I think that's great. But then everything becomes homogenized and everything kind of starts to sound the same, and then like, I don't know, for me, I think what makes what makes players unique is like their voice,
Uh-huh.
and it's like nuances, it's subtle things, it's how they do stuff. It's like repetition of licks. Like I have a few licks that I always turn to that like become things that are like personally mine, but that also add a bit of like a catchy element to playing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like on one hand, I think it's great because like the caliber of player out there, it's like it's almost like they start out the gate like like advanced,
Right,
you know.
right. Yeah.
But at the same time, like you kind of have to find your own sound. You have to find your feel. You have to find the way that you approach songs and you approach playing. And it's like it's you ever see the meme where it's like the guy and he's like there's the steps and he like steps to the third one. that's kind of what it is, because I feel like in the formative years, you find your pocket, you find your groove, you find your like very simple but catchy air drummy sort of stuff. And then at some point, like then you go to the, oh, I want to play fast, or I want to get really crazy fast double strokes, or I want to learn how to solo and be busy and all this sort of stuff, which, like I said, it's a super valuable thing to have.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like it's just like the meme of the guy skipping all the stuff, like the fundamentals that are like pretty crucial in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, for sure. That's wild, man. It's interesting to hear you sort of use that analogy as well. And to your point, it's easy to get lost. I myself am guilty of it in, perusing various social media platforms and being like, man, I need to go home and fucking rip some drum solos already. Luckily for me,
Yeah.
I do play in some instances where I do play drum solos, so I have that outlet specifically within that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's and it's a good thing to have. I mean, I like that if called upon, I can play a drum solo, but
Yeah.
I think the trick then there is to not let that affect my musicality and original projects, and that is where the lines get a little blurry, and I'm like, I've been shredding. Now I'm like, oh right, I have to like calm the fuck down and like groove and do all that, which
Yeah.
you don't really see within necessarily the particular social media. I would say.
Yeah. I mean, this, and to sort of add to that, and also add to what I was originally saying, is that like if it's constantly at 10,
Uh huh.
then like it has no impact, right? So if you're constantly busy and you're constantly going off, there might be a point in the song where it needs to go higher. And if you can't go higher because you've been the highest that you can go within that song, it's like, where do you go from there? So it's just like interesting game. I'm gonna say game, but it's this interesting battle of like finding where to put the like maximize what you can most in the space that you're given, that's going to serve what's going on, and serve whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the times that you can like show off a little bit, you can go a little higher, you do.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's definitely lost in social media, because it's all about catching people's attention instantly and drawing them in. It's
Mm-hmm.
like with most people look at reels and TikToks for like 2 to 4 seconds,
Right.
and either it clicks or it doesn't, and then
Right.
you're off to the next one.
Yeah. And I mean, part of what you're talking about is also nuance and patience. And that is two things that are relatively non-existent within the world that we're talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, lack of focus. I mean, I suffer from it too. I definitely am noticing I have brain rot going on, which I'm like, oh man, how do I fucking get away with this? How do I mean, I already have like ADHD to begin with, and it's
Yeah.
like exacerbating those symptoms.
It's
So it's,
yeah. It's like, yeah, here's everything you always wanted to just get your scattered brain running in 1,000 directions simultaneously. Yeah.
yeah, it's,
And most of the drummers that I've spoken to, I've over 300 now. I'd say that that's a pretty common trait that I've noticed amongst drummers,
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. So we got off on a tangent. I meant to circle back about the new record, which, by the way,
yeah.
is sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Will Putney produce this one?
Yeah, produced, engineered, mixed, and mastered it.
Wow, the whole damn thing. That's crazy. He's
He's a one man stop. And you also too, when you record with him, you basically live at his place, because he has a fairly sizable house in like rural New Jersey, basically.
totally.
So you're also living on site. Obviously, his part of the house is at a whole other end, and then the studio's at another end. But yeah, everything kind of happens, and yeah, he does. It's like he's providing living. He's producing. He's engineering. He's mixing. It's the whole nine. So
Wow. Yeah, man, he produces some pretty big, heavy records for sure, and I think that
yep.
I think people are going to be psyched when they can hear this record front to back, like I have. Thankfully,
Mhm.
it's big and powerful, man, for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. He has his big full production. The drums are big and full. Everything sounds massive, and I always felt that like with our last records, minus Tropicrot, uh, the production, even though they kind of have their own sort of unique sonic identities. And for me, it was always like the drums felt a little hollow and a little not as big and thunderous as they could be. And it's just
Yeah.
time and place and people you work with and things you're trying to do, you know. So, you know, as being an adult and understanding more about that stuff and understanding more what you want is like, you know, obviously going to Will, you were going to get a nice big old drum sound, but just a big old fucking record period. So
Yeah.
yeah, very, very happy with it.
Nice. When it came time to go out there as a band and record the tracks, etc. I'm assuming y'all did the fairly traditional record the drums first with scratch guitars, whatever, and then start to piece it together, or did you go
Nope.
last?
Nope. So the way Will works is you do the demoing stage. He uses Logic. So
Okay.
you essentially build everything out with like demo drums and like real sounding demo drums with real fills and real everything. And you know, you get basically the framework of a song, and he does it in a complete full Logic session. So you're not opening and closing. It's like the entire record is in one.
Wow.
It's in one session. So
That's
you
cool.
want to bounce around and do stuff for efficiency. It's like real great.
That makes sense.
Uh, so what he does is you'll build. We'll all be in the room and we'll all be contributing and we'll all be this should do this and this should do that. Blah blah blah. And then you put the song together. And then once we have material, then what I'll do is I'll go if I'm on site and we wrote the wrote it there wrote the song there. I'll go into another part of the house where there's a drum set. I'll learn it. I'll embellish the parts. I'll fuck around with stuff. I'll sort of expand upon what we sort of came up with when we were in the room, like doing the song, and do my thing. And then what will happen is Ryan will start tracking guitars, like real proper guitars to what is there.
Mm.
So by the time we eventually do drums, that's the only thing that's kind of off site. So he has a sort of cottage that is turned into like a home drum room, I guess you'd say. He
Hmm.
shares it with a few other individuals that do production out of there. And you just go there and, you know, we have the full record and we get tones and everything sounds great. And, you know, he has, you know, some great, you know, Neve, pre's like pre and EQs. I think they're 1073 or 1084s. So you get that like real great drum sound.
Hmm.
And then I'm playing to the real guitar stuff that's there. And we'll
Huh.
go through some. So if I've learned it on the fly, because there was quite a few songs that I had to learn in like a week and a half, something like that.
Yeah.
You know, there's no time for him to say, "Oh, that's cool what you're doing," or "I think it should be this or it should be that." So what we'll do is basically we would go in for the newer stuff. We would just do section by section, and we would scrutinize each section, right? So if I played an intro, he'd be like, "That's cool," or he's like, I'm thinking it needs this. I'm thinking it needs that. Or I'm thinking this or I'm that. And then him and I will go back and forth. We'll negotiate. He'll have an idea. I'll try the idea. Hey, that's cool. He'll say something. I think it should be this way. Okay, cool. Or sometimes I had a part that I really liked and he had a part and we would just marry the two together. Or the
Mm.
part, not he had a part, but a part from the demo session
Ah.
that was there. And I'm like, I think this is cool. What if we put them together?
Hmm.
And sometimes you'll come up with cool ideas that way, but essentially like just so that we can make sure everything was done correctly, we did section by section by section by section
Wow.
because it was new material. I had no time because like certain songs like Everything Hurts, Plague the Most,
Hmm.
Wax Mask, and then what's the fucking other one? um there was a fourth one that I'm like totally fucking drawing blanks on.
Yeah.
Anyways, there was a fourth one. There was a fourth one that was there that like I had months and months to fuck around with. Like
Hmm.
Ryan and I had went out to Will's and like put it together and fucked around with stuff. And then those demos came home and I just went to our studio and I learned it. I'm like, that could be cool. That could be better. Let me try a different kick pattern. Let me try a different thing. Blah, 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 blah. So when we approached those songs, those went like real quick.
Hmm.
Sometimes I would nail it and he'd be like, that's cool. And then sometimes be like, let's marry what with the original demo versus what you have now there. Um, so it was a lot of that just because of this process. And this is like the first Poison Wall record that we did where we weren't in a room banging our heads against the wall trying to figure stuff out.
Wow.
It was all written with us in a room doing it, but not like playing, but like with a fucking studio set. It's essentially a studio record, you know.
Right,
Whereas
right.
Tropigrot, we were in a like a rehearsal spot for 2.5, 3 months, like literally. And this is pre, having access to nice recording stuff, and pre like it was the beginning of the age of the smartphone. So we would like record shit on a crappy boombox. Like when we did the record with Evans, we had just shitty demos that we brought to him.
Wow.
And he kind of went through, and same thing with every record prior. We'd be in my when I growing up in Florida, like my dad had converted the garage that I had, into like a studio. So most of You Come Before You was written and fucked around with in my dad's garage, and stuff like that, where it was always in the room, which there's value to that. But there's also value in just, you're in there with the producer and everybody's in the room, and, Ryan has some riffs and Will could work with Ryan, and Ryan, that's cool. I feel like I want to hear more of that. Doing what a producer does, like
Right.
pulls the best out, and then we start doing drums, and I'm like, hey, what if we did this? I'm thinking this, He's like, well, what do you think for a fill? I don't know. Put a placeholder. I'll come back to it and I'll fuck around with it, and then I'd come back and fuck around with it. Just shit like that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of that, which was it's just a whole new process for me. It was very, very foreign.
I was about to say, I'm almost getting anxiety in hearing you talk about like going into this and then relying on communication and bouncing off different ideas and having the sort of studio wherewithal to try that and figure it out and like have these discussions. Like I'm mad. I don't know. I would find that stressful personally.
At first, it was real stressful. It was incredibly stressful because it was like, not only were we coming back to the band and making our first record in 16, 17 years.
Right.
But it was like, it's also going into a super foreign situation with people that I had never worked with Will before. And he's great, but it's just no rapport. Jeffrey Ryan and I are still trying to figure out, where's this go and what is it going to be? Like, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of figuring it out. And on top of it, it's like, I could have been lazy and I could have just went with what we came up with, like demo wise. But that's, I don't know. I want to be competitive with myself. So like whatever was there, I'm like, can I beat that? And sometimes I couldn't. Sometimes the basic fill that we came up with it worked, and then sometimes I'm like, no, like I could beat it. And I did, and it's the difference of like, I felt like I needed to really give it all, even though it was somewhat a confusing process. I needed to give it all, And I won't go into crazy details, but the record was broken up into 2 sessions, and the first session was incredibly stressful, and we lost a lot of time. So coming back to the second session, the clock was on. So the idea of moving into the next record is we're going to go to Will's whenever he has time at different points and start demoing stuff. So that by the time we go out there to do LP number 7, whenever that is, a year and a half from now, we already have hopefully 10 songs, 10, 11, 12 songs. He already knows what it is. I already know what it is. Everybody knows what they're going to do. There's more of an understanding. Maybe we can knock a few out there, but there's not having to do a bunch of songs. But at the end of the day, that just falls on us and sort of bad decisions that sort of we made, which, like I said, it's just, when you're coming back and you're trying to figure it out, you're going to try things and it's going to work. And then you're going to try things and it's going to work. And we tried a few things and they didn't work. And it just cost us time, really,
Right.
But at the end of the day, I feel really great about the record. So as long as the record is being well received and we're pumped on it and people love it and it propels us forward in the direction that we want to go, growing pains. Let's just not do the same thing again. Let's not make the same mistakes when we do the next record.
Right. Yeah, I feel like a lot of it comes down to nomenclature, and that's one of the things that I was imagining while you were talking about working with somebody sort of on the fly with ideas, like how do they describe particular things? I'm like if we're playing at 160 BPMs on the third measure, like halfway through that, you play a tag. I kind of subdivide everything so I can address that particular section and use relatively musical terms to describe it. But if you're working with somebody who doesn't describe it that way, like I've literally been in bands where I've been playing songs and it's like we're speaking two different languages. So that's what was, I was like, oh man, I could see how this could be rough potentially. But once you get a sense of how people communicate with things, then you're like, okay, I get it. If that's not exactly the way that I would describe it, I do understand what you're saying. So now we could fucking communicate, you know? But it can
Yeah.
be tough.
I mean, sometimes that was a problem because I don't communicate drums in that way. Like I'm like, oh, like, I'm putting the snare on the 2 and the 4. Oh, I'm putting the snare on 3. I'm doing quarter notes on the hi-hats. I'm doing eighth notes, 16th notes. Oh, I'm doing a triplet fill, these
Yeah.
accents here. Like I speak in very basic terms just because I don't experience or think about music in that way.
Right.
Like when I hear music, it becomes a sort of flow state experience that makes me feel something. It's not
Mm-hmm.
an intellectual thing.
Right.
It's an emotional thing. And so, sometimes it becomes difficult if I haven't reviewed it because I generally won't review it if I don't have to.
Yeah.
But I just don't really communicate that. So sometimes Will and I would talk past one another if he was explaining something and he would have to hit the playback and I'd be like, okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
But he also moves very quickly too.
Right.
He hones in on something and he's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And like my brain was over here thinking about something else or whatever. So,
Right.
um, so yeah, it's the language of describing stuff. Within the band, we have people that are incredibly creative and have zero musical ability to communicate, like
Uh-huh.
quarter notes or whatever.
Right.
And then you have people that have like really in-depth knowledge of how to do that. And I think we find a common ground in how to communicate with one another. This is the same thing with Will. Will wasn't like, oh, that dotted eighth note or whatever. He's like, oh,
Right.
that. He can kind of communicate in like normal language, like
Yeah.
barbarian language, and and he'd be like, oh, like do that, 16th note picking pattern or whatever, like it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a hybrid of both. Just because, yeah, some of us just don't think about it. It's an emotional sort of experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would say that that's the strength of your plan, which we kind of alluded to earlier. I've never listened to you and thought that you seemed like this cerebral player necessarily. I think you are very specific in the patterns that you do play, but I
Hmm.
think that that all sort of begins with sort of your gut instinct of what is musical in that moment. And then maybe you alter
Yeah.
the things from there. That's just my assessment of your playing in hearing you over, multiple records.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. I always go with my intuition, and then from my intuition, I'll then get analytical and I'll just wait
Mm-hmm.
for flashes of creativity to come. I'm like, man, and I'll loop a part in my brain if I'm in the shower or from my studio or wherever. I'm like, this needs to go, this needs to make me feel something. This needs to do a certain thing for the song. How do I achieve that by like not underplaying, but not overplaying, but getting right up to where it like needs to be? That's always my normal way of thinking. And because sometimes I also need to be pushed a little further because where I naturally think is the line, sometimes, especially with heavy music, it needs to go a little further. But I
Mm-hmm.
also think that, like, especially for the way I view music and I think my playing works, is like everything important happens in between the space of the notes. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like some people, you have to fill up the space. There's some people where it's just like the space is not a problem necessarily, but like the more you fill it up, the more it makes sense for whatever they're doing. But I feel like for me, it's like it's always in between. Everything important is like it's in between. Yeah, it's in between the notes of like maybe not so much with the new record because the new record is we went for a very produced record,
Uh-huh.
and we also did it to a grid. But
Right.
in a normal situation, if you look at Pro Tools and you look at like my hi hat, you'll see that my snare and my kick are always like slightly behind. That's
Uh-huh.
kind of what I mean. The same thing where it's just like it's all like the stuff that happens in between that. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
where like the groove comes from, and that's where someone's actual feel and identity like kind of hang out in.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was like a Rick Beato thing where he was like looking at the waveform of John Bonham's drum parts, and he was like,
Hmm.
look at this, look how it fluctuates, look how this doesn't necessarily line up, but ultimately, what are we going to say that John Bonham wasn't playing killer shit, right? So I agree with
Yeah.
you. There's definitely a lot of the feel and identity can come from a lesser obvious place, but I think what you're saying is ultimately true. I think there's a lot of identity in that space. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
I,
again, I think that's what you have, which is great.
yeah. I mean, I think that's the kind of like the most important part of being a musician is like you could just start playing a groove, and within a few minutes, you're like, oh, that's this person, that's that person. You know, the way
Totally.
they hit the way they hit the drums, the way they tune their drums,
Absolutely.
the sound that comes out of it, like that. Like I'm saying, like the hi hat, and then you can kind of see where it's like, is the snare on it? Is it a little ahead? Is it a little bit behind? You know, that
Hmm.
sort of thing.
How did the
Cool.
reunion tour of sorts come about for the opposite of December? And how did you feel about the reception from the audience? Because I did not see y'all on that tour, but I did see
Hmm.
video of it. And I was like, these guys are kind of having a moment right now. I felt like y'all were having
Yeah.
a moment.
I would definitely agree with that. It was actually something suggested by our manager, just because I don't know, our brains don't really work that way. We don't really look back; we look forward, and it's a manager's job to look at to survey everything and look
Yeah,
at what makes sense and all the stuff going on and be a manager.
right.
So he had presented the idea to us, and we were all into it. But some of the songs we hadn't played forever, and it was definitely a bit of a challenge to put those boots back on and go out there and do it, because we're not teenagers anymore.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of like reception, it was great. It was the biggest tour we ever did. I mean, granted, Klaus Shaw was on it, Better Lovers was on it. There's, it was a great lineup, but I feel like for the most part we were quite well received, and it was great. Like I wouldn't have thought to do it. It was incredibly stressful leading up to it, but at the end of the day, it was a success. So, I mean, I'm just real grateful.
Yeah. What did you realize about your early self and having to revisit all of those parts from those original recordings and where you were at the time?
I mean, some of the stuff is like I just wouldn't play that now,
Yeah,
for better or for worse.
sure.
I would do things differently. Um, it also made me realize too, because I used to listen to those recordings and be like, man, I speed up and I slow down a lot. And then I kind of remember, like, as I was analyzing some of that stuff and I was thinking back, I was like, no one really took into consideration like flat tempos. It would be like, oh, let's put this part here with that part and then do this.
Uh-huh.
And then it goes really fast. And then it, like, when you slow down, like, I kind of remember our original singer, Ari, with some of the earliest stuff, even though he didn't record vocals on it, he was around for some of it before Jeffrey came in. And I kind of remember him being like, "Oh, that shit's got to be heavy, or it's got to be fast, or like." And if you like flatten some of these tempos out, like just the parts just don't work. They don't have the same impact.
Hmm.
So it's like learning a song like 12:23:93. It's like the intro is one tempo, and then when it comes in, it like slows down a little bit. That's two different tempos,
Right, right.
and then the B section, it's good. It speeds up a little bit, and then when it comes back, it slows down. It's just like it's literally just all over the place. I'm like, man,
Right.
I wouldn't have written music like this. Like it's like, but yeah, we're fucking 17, 18 years old at the time. So,
Yeah, totally, man. Jesus, you were doing pretty damn good to be a late teenager, man. I wouldn't.
oh,
That's
dude,
a
absolutely no complaints, no regrets. As much as I say like, oh, I wouldn't do that, or
right,
I had to relearn it. I had to like like kind of basically like relearn how to play double kick as well.
right.
Because I hadn't done that shit in forever. So I was taking lessons with a few different people, and I landed with this guy named James Payne, who's fucking awesome, who like understands in depth. I'm like, oh, this is happening. He's like, he knows exactly what I'm doing, and I've been working with him pretty consistently for like the past year and a half, and it basically went from like a dead left leg to like pretty active. Like I'm approaching the point where I'm going to have to go back to him, and we're going to have to start getting into swivel.
Right.
You know, so swivels are around like 190, 200. You
Yeah.
know, I'm getting real close to like the left leg, because he was like, once you learn it and you get the motion, you just have to play a bunch. And some people pick it up really quick for whatever reason,
Not
and some
me.
people pick it. Yeah, same. It's not just not natural to play rhythm with
No.
your feet. It's natural to tap it,
Right.
but as you know, with the foot, you're manipulating it.
Yeah.
It's sort of, you're manipulating your foot to be able to do it. So it was a combination of like literally having to bring my left foot back and learn ankle technique from scratch, and then also correct some stuff with my right leg, because I was starting to get this aching pain where like my leg meets my pelvic region,
Mm-hmm.
which means I was relying too much on my leg. And then it's like, once you kind of get those two, then like you have to learn how to balance yourself with your
Right.
back. It's just like all these like little things. And then it's like 120, it's all hip flexor. And as like you go upwards to about like 170, 180, it slowly phases from hip flexor to ankle.
Right.
So like every 10 BPMs, it's a slightly different thing. And
Uh-huh.
it's not conscious. You should be doing it, and it should be a pure feel thing. That's kind of what he conveyed to me.